$4.5 billion worth of unsold, brand new goods get thrown away every year.
It's criminal, isn't it?
It is absolutely criminal. And these are clothes, these are appliances, these are food, these are toys.
Hygiene products. Always needed. So today we're going to talk about the work you're doing with Good 360 and how you're saving all that from landfill and putting it to good use with charity. I'm Nicky Sloan. I'm CEO of Community Industry Group, and I'm coming to you today from the beautiful lands of the Dharawal people to bring you Community Matters, the podcast where we explore issues that are important in the community with people who are making a difference. And today I'm joined by the fabulous Susan Wallis. I did ask Susan how to introduce her because I know Susan as an amazing fundraiser, I think one of the most brilliant networkers I've ever seen, chairperson of a fabulous disability organisation called Interchange Illawarra, but her actual title is Head of Government and Philanthropy for Good 360. Welcome, Susan. It's great to be here, and that's a very humbling introduction. Thank you, Nicky.
Well, you're a pretty amazing person. So can you tell us a little bit about how Good 360 started? I mean, what a brilliant idea. Save perfectly good goods from going into landfill. It just seems like a win-win. But how did it all come about?
The origin story is really personal and very Illawarra focused. So my longest friend, Alison Covington AM, we've known each other since primary school. She was inspired by me doing foolish things like riding my push bike from Canberra to Wollongong. So my daughter Gracie went to Parramatta's and it wasn't air conditioned, and when it was too hot, Gracie was susceptible to seizures. So I was having to pull her out of school when it was too hot to go to school. And I'm a fixer, so I decided that wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough for Gracie and not for any other student. So I put together a fundraising team that we rode push bikes from Canberra to Wollongong. And in that time, Alison was late night Googling and thought, surely someone has an air conditioner with a broken box, or it's superseded, or it's been returned. It's sitting in a warehouse. Why is that not going to Parramatta's? And through that exploration, she found Good 360 US, which had been operating for around 30 years at that point, and realised that nobody was doing the same thing in Australia. And as Alison says, once she knew that, she couldn't unknow that. Mm-hmm. And she made it her mission to bring Good 360 to Australia. And that journey started in about 2011, 2012. And here we are in 2026. Good 360's redistributed more than $550 million worth of brand new goods to over 5 million Australians. We support 4,700 charities and disadvantaged schools, and I'm incredibly proud that Gracie Wallis was part of that origin story.
It is amazing in this climate that Parramatta's, which is a school for children with disabilities, was not air conditioned. I mean, it seems like such a basic thing, but what a great way to start something that's led to $550 million worth of savings and less landfill.
Yes. And you then combine the fact that 1 in 7 Australians are living under the poverty line and need the basic items, the essential items that are going to waste. And they're perfectly usable brand new goods that are, for whatever reason, not sold. You know, we have an assumption that the retail sector discounts things enough that everything gets sold, but that's not the case. And the retail sector is pretty efficient. I mean, they do manage to move about 95% of their product. That's a pretty efficient operating model. But that 5% is still a huge volume of goods combined with the returns market, which is, people are bracketing, particularly women purchasing clothing online. If you buy a couple of sizes because you're not sure what size you are, you assume that when you send that back, it goes back into stock, and often it doesn't. And that product goes to landfill as well. So there's all these essential items, things like hygiene products, which you talked about in your introduction. Hygiene products have a best before or a use by date. And we're very careful to not not put anyone at risk. We make sure that there's material safety data sheets and that there's an extension of use if necessary from a producer. But I don't know how old my shampoo and conditioner is, or when my soap was made, or how much longer I've got on my toothpaste. I just use it. And if you're a person who can't afford hygiene products, and hygiene poverty is a massive issue in Australia, our data says that up to 1 in 4 people are experiencing hygiene poverty due to the cost of living pressure. Then you add the fuel crisis currently. You're just happy to have toothpaste. And we're really proud to be making a dent in that need. But the need is escalating. It gets bigger and bigger every year, and we can't keep up.
We know things like that hygiene poverty. It actually impacts your whole life.
Absolutely.
It can have such an impact on your socialisation and your mental health. So, I think we often see those baskets at the supermarket where you can buy extra and pop them in. But this is a great way of saving things that would have been just thrown away. Mm. And I do remember actually when Good 360 first started. I didn't realise it was 2011, so that's quite some time ago. But I've just seen it grow. And as you say, started here in the Illawarra, but now it's really a national organisation, isn't it? Doing some brilliant work right across the country.
Mm. We've always had a national remit. Our constitution and our goal, our mission is national. We have one warehouse in Sydney, in Smithfield. We use the infrastructure of our partners because we don't want, it's not sustainable to have a warehouse in every state for a whole range of reasons. But the local flavour is really important. And, my role as Government and Philanthropy is begging for money. But I have, I'm like you said, I like to network, and I take a real personal interest in making sure that the Illawarra gets their share of goods. And so I'm, very, very active in advocacy and trying to recruit members and making sure the Illawarra gets their share. And so, I haven't looked at the stats lately, but more than 100 charities and disadvantaged schools in the Illawarra and Shoalhaven are members of Good 360, and they've had millions of dollars of goods. And I personally occasionally do courier runs. Little bit of information. I can actually fit a whole pallet of cat food in my tiny car. Just ask Michelle Glasgow from Women Illawarra. She thought it was a TARDIS. So yes, we're a national organisation. We're very proud of that. But I personally take responsibility for some of the Wollongong impact, and was really pleased to do some projects with Community Industry Group back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, for example, organisations like the Conservatorium have benefited. I've seen local place-based organisations in some really disadvantaged areas who've been able to do things like give away Lego to kids. Lego.
Healthy Cities Illawarra love our Lego and our books. Yeah. I deliver to them too.
I'm really interested why Women Illawarra were getting a pallet load of cat food.
Good 360, we redistribute everything but food. So, the $4.5 billion surplus we're talking about is not the food surplus. It's just everything else.
Right.
But we do work with some pet suppliers, and cat food or pet food is one of the products that comes to us occasionally. Once again, it has a best before date or a use by date. And there are a lot of services in the homelessness space in particular who we know that having a pet is a protective factor, and there are a lot of people who would choose to feed their animals before they feed themselves. So when pet food was available on Good 360's website, Michelle Glasgow was interested in getting access to that, but the cost of actually delivering those goods can be prohibitive.
Right.
So because we can supply the goods, but we don't have our own vans and trucks to deliver them. And if we did, there'd be a cost for that too. So I think I just, probably knowing me, I offered to deliver them. And, I drive a little Mazda CX-3. And yes, I managed to get a whole pallet. And also through Good 360, Women Illawarra at the time had access to a storage facility. And so I met Michelle. I think it might have only been the second time I met her in this storage facility, and then just piled all of this cat food out. And then a pallet of cat food is a lot of product for one organisation. And my understanding is that then they shared that with other Illawarra organisations, so that other services providing support in the community, were able to feed their animals without trying to choose between, do I buy hygiene products? Do I feed myself, or do I feed my pets? Well, everybody won in that situation.
Yeah. So what other things, if there's people from charities or schools in disadvantaged areas who are watching or listening today, what other kinds of things have organisations taken advantage of? How have you helped?
Absolutely everything. Everything but the kitchen sink is what I say, and if we had a kitchen sink, we'd find a home for that too. So clothing, hygiene items. We work across 5 specific impact areas. So home, everything in the home that you would need, whether that's linen, furniture, hygiene, that's fairly self-explanatory. Education, so educational essentials, which includes digital devices as well as pens and pencils and stationery. And then play, so play is art items, sporting goods, and play is really important whether you're a child or an adult. And then we also have the disaster relief impact area. So all of those things are encompassed in disaster relief, but it's also a separate category that we support the community with.
So we have a world which overproduces. We've got someone like Good 360 or an organisation like Good 360 who's taking physical goods. We have things like Need a Feed and Oz Harvest who are doing it with food surpluses, because we know there's lots of people who go without food as well. What is the missing piece between all the stuff out there, all the extra stuff, and people who need it? Where's the disconnect?
Yes. Well, it's interesting. Good 360 we call ourselves connectors.
Right.
It's in our vernacular. We are connectors, and as I touched on before, the retail sector doesn't enjoy that products go to waste, but somebody needs to be that middleman to then pass them on to people in need. One of the key things about our model is that we're not delivering one-to-one, we're delivering many-to-many. And if we were delivering one-to-one, we couldn't do it at the scale. We'd need thousands of staff. But with the many-to-many model, we work with charities and disadvantaged schools who know exactly what their community needs at any given time. And so by delivering by the box or the pallet or sometimes the truckload, we are that connector to get the surplus from the retail sector to the person in need. And also your average small organisation can't take a truckload.
No.
So putting it on our website in the volumes that an organisation can order in the volume they need them means that we can, sometimes it does go by the truckload, but if you only need a carton, then that works as well. So we are really that connecting piece, and we say we're Australia's biggest marketplace connecting surplus and need.
Right. And how are you funded then?
It's a very good question.
Yeah.
From someone who begs for money for a living. So our funding sources are numerous. We do receive some federal government funding. That was hard fought. That took 5 years, and I'm very proud that happened last year. We receive philanthropic and government funding. So that's generally all grant funding, a lot of sucking up and begging for money. But we also receive some corporate funding. from some of our providers, some of our donors actually fund the connection piece and provide money to go with the goods that they donate, simply because they recognise that it costs us money to distribute it for them. And we also charge an administration fee or a handling fee. So it's a very small fee. It's usually around about 5%. And we pass that cost on to some of our members for some of the goods, or most of the goods, to be honest. But if you were going to buy hygiene products, or if you were going to buy clothing anyway, purchasing it at 5% of the retail value, or funding the distribution, you're not really buying it off us. That also creates an income stream for us. But it's a complicated revenue balance, as it always is in the not-for-profit sector.
It is, and congratulations on the federal funding, because that's hard won. So there is a nominal fee for the charities and schools that get the goods. But we all know, in this sector, that the cost of running an organisation, the overheads for running an organisation, they have to be covered from somewhere.
Yes. Just because you're in the community sector doesn't mean that you're volunteering your time.
No.
And it's one of the challenges in the grant and philanthropy space in particular, that, funders need to accept that there are admin costs. We need to keep the lights on and pay our staff. And so, balancing a budget and a grant application and getting funders to understand the balance between the delivery of impact and the cost of delivering that impact is an ongoing challenge. But it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, it is a challenge. Often, particularly philanthropy doesn't want to cover overheads. It is a key part of our advocacy that we believe that all funding grants should recognise 20% for overheads, because we can't run our organisations without paying rent, utilities, having a finance section and an admin and an IT, and all of those things cost money.
And if you want to attract good staff, you've got to pay them market rates.
Yes.
Otherwise they will not work in the sector. They'll work somewhere else.
Yes, absolutely. I find networking really, really hard. How do you make it so easy?
I just find a way to connect with people. And I think my skill is encouraging people to do what I need them to do or want them to do without them knowing that that's what I'm doing. And the first thing you need to do is just find a common ground and have a rapport. And it could be as simple as, sometimes it's really obvious you've been introduced before, or it's remembering the small details.
Yeah, right.
But also just, arriving here this morning and ordering a coffee, one of the lovely hospitality workers just walked through and said, "What's that colour you're wearing? That's amazing. It looks fabulous." Now, that's the kind of thing that I would say, but it was really genuine. The voice came before the face came.
Yeah.
It's finding a reason to make somebody feel good about themselves, quite simply. And whether you are a minister, a federal minister, or a colleague in any industry, don't we all deserve to feel good and to feel connected? So I don't find it particularly difficult. I just treat people the way I'd like to be treated.
One of the first times I saw you, Susan, I know we've talked about you being a fundraiser and a networker, but you are also a brilliant advocate, particularly for people with disability. And one of the first times I saw you was actually one of Community Industry Group. I think it was one of our conferences, and John Ajaka, who was their Minister for Disabilities, was there. And you were way up the back of the room, I remember, and he delivered his address, and we said, "Does anybody have any questions?" And you stood straight up and you spoke so passionately about Gracie and about her needs and the things that she wasn't getting. that was really inspiring. But it is an incredibly brave thing to do. I think there's lots of people out there who would love to be able to do that. What do you have any tips for them on how to go about that? Because you just stood up and told your story. Honestly, wow. I remember it to this day.
See, I remember meeting John Ajaka, and I remember taking Gracie to that meeting, but I don't remember asking a question. So you've got a better memory than I do. Coming back to Alison Covington, Alison said to me very early in my journey with Gracie that I had a responsibility to speak up for people who couldn't speak up for themselves. And it drives me. I mean, I'm a fairly successful networker, and I'm a reasonably good public speaker. I actually quite enjoy public speaking. I'm one of those strange people. And so if I have a platform and people will listen to me, I'm going to use that, and I'm going to use it for good. And I'm very passionate about inclusion, and I don't miss an opportunity. So am I nervous? Always, am I a little bit nervous today? Of course, but it's because it matters. And I'm also not afraid to cry in public, which I also do fairly often. You might actually get that at the end of this podcast. So I don't know. I just feel like I should. I feel that I have these skills and I should be using them. And if I change one person's attitude or somebody learns something, coming back to John Ajaka, he really engaged with Gracie, which was really special. I've got some beautiful photos of that. In fact, it was photographed by the Mercury and used in the Mercury. It was one of our first public advocacy opportunities, and he connected so well that I was forever known as Gracie's mum. I did run into him a number of times. Nothing made me prouder than being known as Gracie's mum, because she should be the one he remembers and not me.
The other part of what you do is you volunteer a great deal of your time, particularly for disability and inclusion, and as I said, for one of our fabulous member organisations, Interchange Illawarra. What drives you there? What do you give, and then what do you get from volunteering? Because there's definitely advantages, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Volunteering actually makes me feel good. It's a management tool for my own mental health, and I think I get so much more out of it than I give. Jake Pearson and I, the CEO of Interchange, have a really good relationship. Jake joined Interchange about 3 months before I was on the board, so we've kind of grown up together in the organisation, and we mentor each other, we support each other. Interchange is not a big organisation, and it's really important that people at the top get that level of support. We're flat, so therefore it makes it more important that the chair and the CEO get on well. And I say thank you to Jake all the time, and he'll say, no, what are you thanking me for? I really feel that it's a privilege to be in that role. And coming back to the management of my own circumstances, I identify as a person with a disability. I have acquired neurodivergence from complex PTSD, which is probably not unexpected, having cared for a disabled child and then palliatively nursing her. I cope by giving. I think kindness is a major protective factor for me. And so, and I don't know what people do with their extra time if they don't volunteer. That seems really naive, or I don't want it to sound judgmental, but I guess I've always done it, and I'm really proud that my daughter Sophie follows in my footsteps, and she volunteers for frame running, a local service for kids with disabilities that has evolved into her becoming a disability support worker. She volunteers by singing the national anthem in Dharawal, which I'm really proud of. She performs that at public events. And I think my mum was a volunteer. She used to go into schools and help kids learn to read and write back in the day, when we didn't have as much disability inclusion. So I think it's just in my DNA. It's really interesting. I've never thought about it before as to why I do it. But I can't wait to retire so I can do more volunteering.
I'm with you. I'm with you. And there are so many ways to volunteer. And like you, I've got about 25 years of volunteering on boards. That's the way I volunteer because it's the way that I can at the moment.
Yes.
It fits into my life at the moment.
And it doesn't have to be the chair that takes hours a month. It could be helping your neighbour bring their shopping in because they're elderly, or picking up their groceries. It could just be half an hour a week. It could be in addition to what you're already doing in your day, and without being onerous or time consuming. Or I just find a way of looking after people. My one of my mantras is that we should leave the world better than we found it. And if you help one person in a day or a week, you're leaving the world better than you found it.
I love your focus on kindness, and kindness has been something I've been really reflecting on probably the last year or two, as I see kindness is really feels like it's being stripped out of the world a little bit at the moment, at the very highest level. And when we strip kindness out, we strip things like equity out, we strip inclusion out, we strip social justice out. How do we encourage? You work a lot with people at a very high level. How do we just encourage that kindness lens back into our world?
Well, I think the simplest way is just to role model, is to always find those opportunities for kindness, whether it's as simple as a smile, opening the door for someone, just putting your hand up when someone lets you merge. I get really frustrated when, because I'm always looking for an opportunity to, I don't want it to sound like kindness is an effort. It just should be natural. But we all share this world and we all share the space. And if you can do something to make someone else's life easier, simpler, better, whether it's just a smile at them, it's just taking those opportunities. I don't know how you push that up to where it really needs to be. We could go down a whole political rabbit hole there. But I'm really pleased that the people I deal with, particularly in my government philanthropy role, they're really kind people. I mean, we should be very proud of our elected representatives. We also need to be really careful to curate what comes into the content that we consume. I think the more negative content you consume, the more negative content you get. And so we need to throw more positive content out there. And things like this podcast, for example, it's a great way of modelling kindness, because we're sending, you're sending incredible messages about equity and inclusion and cultural safety and, things that matter to the community. So you're playing a role in making the world kinder, I think.
Oh, well, that's lovely. Thank you, because that is certainly something that we really aim for. You spoke about leaving the world a much better place, and I think in all that you do, in your volunteering, in your fundraising, and your fundraising, you've done some really interesting fundraising, haven't you? I mean, you rode your bike to Canberra. For anybody who doesn't know, that distance is about 300
Yeah,
kilometres?
It was 362 kilometres because we didn't go in a straight line. And that, for a bike rider, that's not a big deal. That can be a latte ride for some bike riders. But I was 43. I hadn't owned a bike until I was 40, didn't have a bike as a child, and I'd never ridden on a road before. So it was quite the distance. And that was, somebody challenged me to do that, and I also don't back away from a challenge. So yes, that's led me to do other sort of interesting things to fundraise.
So you recently went to Kokoda.
Yes, that was thanks to Alison Burns. She challenged me to go. I didn't end up going with Alison on that trip, but I walked the Kokoda Track in August 2025, and I raised $7,500 for Walk With Us Kokoda to support veterans in our community.
Oh, that's wonderful. And we have had Lachlan Stevens on the podcast, who, of course, does a lot of those Kokoda tracks.
He's going back next week, I think.
What did you learn?
Oh, that's a whole other podcast. What did I learn? I learnt to absolutely trust myself, and that I could do more than I imagined, and that my greatest limit is my own thoughts. I also learnt a lot about our military history, and I gained a lot of respect for the sacrifice of our veterans, and made some lifelong friends, and I have a whole heap of extra family members. So, learnt a lot, and continue to take that into my day-to-day life.
And I know, for example, with Interchange, they got a fabulous new building, invested. It's a really big thing for a very small organisation to invest in building.
Yes.
But Good 360 were able to help with furnishing them, yeah?
Yeah, we were really fortunate. There was a bit of networking there, but very fortunate that around the time the new building was being developed, there was a donation of product from Harvey Norman available. So Harvey Norman's one of our major partners. They supply their end-of-line stock or their floor stock, and all of the furniture in that new building came from Harvey Norman, and at a quality that Interchange could never have afforded to supply. And from a valued status perspective, people with disabilities deserve a really beautiful location. They deserve to have beautiful furniture, and not only beautiful furniture, but high quality furniture that's going to survive the level of use that it gets in that building. So it's really beautiful to walk into that space and see that, I feel very chairperson-y. I like to say that. I feel very chairperson-y when I can see that I didn't just sit at the head of a table and chair a meeting. I actually made a real tangible difference, and people with disabilities are benefiting from that.
Yeah, fantastic. And if anybody is listening and thinking about, I wonder what could help us in our organisation, how do they go about becoming a member of Good 360?
So membership is essential to make sure that the goods are being used in the way they're intended by the donor. So when we say membership, it's a free membership, but to be eligible to be a member, you need to be an ACNC registered charity or a disadvantaged school with an ICSIA rating of under 1,000. So that's a disadvantaged rating. You go to the Good 360 website, www.good360.org.au, and it's, you'll see how to get involved and become a member, and using the power of technology, you create an account, or you apply for an account, and you'll get in contact with our customer success team and go down that pathway. The website connects to the ACNC register, so it will tell you almost immediately. But it's not a difficult process. And then to get access to goods, you order online. We're an online platform, a marketplace connecting surplus to need, and so particularly good for volunteers who are working. You can order after hours or on the weekends. You don't need to be going physically into a store during office hours. So we're available 24/7, and if you're really lucky or unlucky and you're from Wollongong, you might end up getting a visit from me with a pallet of cat food.
When we will put that website in our show notes, so if anyone missed it, they'll be able to get onto it from there. So it's just been fascinating, Susan. I think we could talk all day. But one thing that I do ask all of our guests, this podcast is called Community Matters. Could you tell us about someone in the community that matters to you?
This is when the tears will come. The obvious person is Gracie Wallis, but I'm going to surprise you when it's not Gracie Wallis. The person that really matters to me is Mackenzie Howard. She's a young female, a very powerful, intelligent woman who's a graduate of UOW's Bachelor of Social Work. She's also the first recipient of the Gracie Wallis Scholarship for a Woman with a Disability that we present on International Women's Day every year. And she's a director of Interchange Illawarra, which is my newest director. And she happens to be in a wheelchair. And that's the least interesting thing about Mackenzie. So I love that we have disability representation on our board. She also helps to bring down the average age of representation, which is helpful. And the reason I bring up Mackenzie and, coming back to my networking skills is Mackenzie's a highly capable woman who's looking for work and not employed. And so, my call out and the reason I highlight Mackenzie is that, she'd be an incredible employee for any organisation, and I encourage anyone interested in employing a woman with a disability with a social work degree to connect with me or connect with you, Nicky, and we'll introduce them to Mackenzie. So Mackenzie Howard matters.
Yes, Mackenzie Howard matters, and a qualified social worker. We need them in our sector. We desperately need more in the sector and in the health sector.
Absolutely. And with lived experience of disability,
yes,
she has an extraordinary skill set.
In fact, lived expertise.
Yes.
Lived expertise.
Yes, that's right.
Is something we recently explored in a podcast. I think we're going to explore again in a podcast very soon, that lived expertise is really important and really valuable and can add so much.
And that's where genuine inclusion comes from.
It does. Thank you so much, Susan. It has just been a real pleasure to have you along today, and thank you for sharing so much of your work and so much of your commitment to the sector, to making the world a better place, and ultimately to kindness. So thank you. And thank you all for tuning in today to Community Matters, the podcast where we explore issues that are important in our community with people like Susan who are making a difference. Please do like us, share, leave us a review, and tune in next time for more Community Matters.